Welcome everyone. Hopefully everyone's having a great week, a great Wednesday. Welcome to session two of Amplify DU for here of summer of 2026. Great to see some familiar names. Great to see some new folks this week. Obviously, this is the second of five total webinar sessions. And tonight we're all talking about busting myths within recruitment. I have 10 different myths or 10 different kind of common phrases that I hear when talking about recruitment with undergraduates, whether that is recruitment coaching or just through text or email or talking with fraternity and sorority life advisors or other campus professionals, even alumni and advisors. And so wanted to spend a good portion of, or really the whole portion of tonight, but also a good chunk of our Amplify session this summer, really debunking some of those myths. And so really talking about kind of the common themes that we're hearing and why those aren't necessarily 100% accurate. So we have 10 of them tonight. We'll try to get through everything within the hour and then get you all going for the rest of the evening. Again, couple just housekeeping items. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those until the end, or you can throw those in the chat. And my growth team colleagues, Axel and Chase, will go ahead and make sure those get answered, whether that's in the chat or at the very end. And then making sure that you just stay off mute. We don't want to have any background noise or anything of that nature there. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and jump in with myth number one, which is there's not enough interest in fraternity on my campus. So this is something that I'll hear, not necessarily with every chapter I work with or with every vice president of recruitment or recruitment team, but there are times that myself or Axel or Chase and working with chapters might hear, hey, Hayden, hey, Chase, hey, Axel, there's just not enough interest in fraternity on my campus. And I will tell you right now that that is completely false. There's been research done, and some of you who have been on calls with me or who have done Amplify before will know this statistic. Fired Up, who some of you may know of, they do campus director, they do chapter builder, they may have done a session for you on your specific campus. They are a organization or really a business that helps fraternity and sorority life grow. They do consulting work, they do presentations, they do facilitated discussions or facilitated workshops for undergraduates, both in the fraternity and sorority realm. They've done some research within the past 2 to 3 years, really focused on non-joiners. So they're asking non-joiners, individuals who did not join a fraternity, specifically in this case, a fraternity in their undergraduate career, what their interest level was at any point within their 4 years, I guess even longer, sometimes 5 year experience in school. And what they found through this research is that 43% of non-joiners, so 43% of individuals who did not join a fraternity while in school, had a high or neutral interest in potentially joining a fraternity. So when we talk about this in this myth of saying, hey, there's just not enough interest on my campus for whatever reason, sometimes individuals will say there's not enough interest from guys outside of those who show up to IFC recruitment or who they themselves expressed interest. This is going to show that no, research is telling us that there is a higher neutral interest from 43% of non-joiners. And so what I always tell chapters that I work with, that Axel works with, that Chase works with, just in general, whenever we're having this discussion, is that there are guys walking around on your campus who have a higher neutral interest in joining. We just now need to go find them, and we need to make sure that they understand that Delta Upsilon in this case is an opportunity for them, and then obviously go and build those relationships. And so that leads into myth number two. We hear this a lot. Hayden, P&Ms will just come to us. They'll come to the chapter. If a guy is interested, they'll be the ones reaching out to us. They'll be the ones sending the DM. They'll come up to the table. They will find us at our recruitment event that we posted online. They will just come to us. Right. And with that being said, that's not, again, the case whatsoever. I think a lot of you on this call, at least I see some familiar names, have done a lot of good work in really not getting in this mindset and understanding that that's not the case and that we have to be the ones to go out and find those P&Ms and start building those relationships. And within the Fired Up research, and this is just the next statistic, which is really important for us to understand, it was asked why these individuals who showed a higher neutral interest within joining a fraternity did not join an organization or didn't really go beyond just saying, I have interest, right? are acting upon that interest. And they found that 75% of those individuals, 75% of non-joiners who had a higher neutral interest in joining, simply said they never joined a fraternal organization on their campus because they were never recruited. They just weren't, right? Nobody asked them, hey, will you join, right? What we know is the always joiners, those individuals who do sign up for IFC primary recruitment, the individuals who do send the DMs on Instagram, the individuals who do show up to our events because they saw the recruitment flyer, those are the ones that we don't necessarily have to worry about too much. We find them. Those are the ones that will quote unquote come to us. But what we're also finding, and what we also have to remember and not get ourselves into, is the fact that 75% of individuals who do have a higher neutral interest on our campus just need to be asked, hey, is this something that you might be interested in learning more about? Now, Fired Up went a step further. They said, okay, if you have a higher neutral interest, you were never recruited. If we were to ask you, would you be interested in joining an organization focused on high moral development, human connection, leadership, and making a positive impact on the world? Would you say, yes, I would be interested in joining that, or at least learning more about that? And what's really cool about this question is I believe that Delta Upsilon as an organization is focused on high moral development, is focused on connection, is focused on leadership and leadership opportunity, and is focused on making a positive impact on the world, right? The world specifically with the Global Service Initiative, but just all the things that Delta Upsilon is about and what we value in our mission as an organization. 91% of the individuals said, yes, I'd be interested in joining that specific organization on my campus, which tells us that we have to stop thinking P&Ms will show up and start putting in the work to go find P&Ms. Because what do we know? We know that there are 43%, there's 43% of non-joiners, right? And that obviously number will change depending on your campus, have a higher neutral interest, which means they're not going to fully say no to us right off the bat. We also know that a lot of those guys just need to be asked. And we also know an even higher percentage of those individuals will say yes to something that we offer as an organization. And so if we're getting in the mindset, or you're hearing yourself kind of internally, or even hear yourself talking with your recruitment committee, hey guys, like P&Ms will just show up to us if we, make it appealing, if we have the right events, if we show up in table, guys will know to show up to our table, guys will know to show up to our event. We have to get out of that mindset, and we have to know that's not true whatsoever, right? Yes, some individuals will. Yes, some individuals will find us. But for the most part, we have to stop thinking that that will just happen and they're going to line up at our door. And we have to start putting in the work to go find P&Ms. And there are a ton of stories, especially over this past year, of chapters that I've worked with who have done this. They changed that mindset and they started putting in the work, and they saw very positive results, not only on the quantity of individual, but also the quality of individual. They're starting to find and diversify their pool and pipelines. And we'll talk a little bit more about this today, of who they are going to recruit, and that's exponentially helped them in their growth of their chapter and setting a really good foundation moving forward. Myth number 3, and we hear this, is like, Hayden, there are only a few places on campus we can find P&Ms, right? We can find them in the dorms, we can find them through IFC primary recruitment, and maybe we can find them like in the rec center, right? I'm not really sure that there are many more places that we can find individuals. I'm not sure that there's a lot of P&Ms outside of those places. And so we're just kind of sticking to those kind of main areas, right? Well, again, that's false. There are a ton of different places on your campus, both traditionally and within the digital space, that we can find potential new members. And so you'll see here, this is just resources from Fired Up, a recent growth summit the growth summit that they had last year virtually. This upcoming Tuesday, they'll have another growth summit that myself, Chase, and Axel will be attending. So there'll be a lot more information that we'll be able to gather and then obviously share with you all within the Amplify space. But if you look right here, there are so many different pipelines that you all can kind of work through. And again, each pipeline is not necessarily going to yield you 40, 50, 60 names, but it might yield you 2, 3, 4, 5 guys. And those 4 or 5 guys might lead you to another 10, 12, 15 guys, right? But we have to get out of this mindset that there's just not many places for us to meet students, or there's not many places on campus where P&Ms are. One of my favorite places, especially over the summer, every single individual who talks to me about recruitment knows this. I will always bring up, does your university or campus have a class of 20 blank, 2029? Now it's going to be 2030. And how do we use those free leads, guys who are posting on these pages saying, here's who I am. I'm excited to come to this campus. I'm looking to get involved with intramurals. I want to, rush. Like these guys are telling you information. That is a area in which we have to capitalize on. Those are individuals that we need to make sure we're following. They're following back, and we're providing DMs. Right. This is also how do we start posting stories, right, and tagging people. How maybe we do a link in bio, a referral form. Like that is a way to find individuals in the digital space, and then the traditional space, right? Are there scholarships that your chapter offers that you can then reach out to the entirety of campus or a subsection of campus through your Greek life office? If that's the case, we definitely need to take advantage of it. Do you guys have move-in days that you can participate in? I know a lot of chapters do, and a lot of chapters do participate in them, right? Do you volunteer with different offices on campus, or do your members volunteer with different offices on campus in which they can then find individuals that they volunteer with? No bid list or past recruitment list. Have we asked our fraternity and sorority life office, hey, is there past no bid list? Is there a past recruitment list that we can at least work off of? For some campuses, I know our Cal chapter has the ability at some level to mass email out everyone in a subsection. I forget, Axel can speak a little bit more to this as he works with the chapter, but they have the ability to send an email out to certain groups of students about Delta Upsilon. And so they're able to utilize that resource and that pipeline there. And then obviously your traditional ones, right? You're going to have potential like tabling at orientation or a club fair, tabling just generally on campus. You're going to have IFC primary recruitment, but there's so many different areas and so many different ways and pipelines that we can utilize that are going to allow for us to find these PNMs and allow for us to find these PNMs who do have a higher neutral interest. And all they have to do is be asked, hey, is this something that interests you? And I guarantee you, your likelihood of getting just more interested PNMs go up when you explore and you dive into more pipelines and more areas on campus, both in the traditional space and in the digital space. So those are myths one, two, and three. We'll move on to four, five, and six. Number four, and this one really grinds my gears a lot of the times. I know guys that have worked with me, I'm always talking and asking about names list. Our names list can be on the smaller end, right? If we have and essentially what I hear a lot of is like, if we have a lot of high interest and high engagement, our names list simply can be a little bit smaller than it needs to be. The truth of the matter is that's not the case. And let's do the math here. And again, a lot of guys understand this. A lot of guys know this, who I've worked with across the board. Uh, Essentially, here's the math that you have to do for your own chapter. Let's say the new member goal for your chapter this fall is 15. We want to get 15 guys to have accepted bids. What we have to do is, in order for us to have the highest likelihood of getting that new member goal, we have to multiply that number by two to get 30 what fired up. And this is all through Chapter Builder. So I'll walk through kind of A, B, C, and D. What A's are is essentially bids extended. We have to, at minimum, extend 30 bids in order for us to have the highest likelihood that we are going to get 15 bids accepted, which is our goal. From there, we have to have 60 guys who would be in this B range, this B category. That means there's a mutual interest. We have interest in them, they have interest in us. We haven't fully made our decision yet on whether or not we're going to receive a bid or extend them a bid, but we know that there's about 60 guys minimum that we have some good mutual interest. Then you have to multiply that number by two. And we have to have 120 guys who have expressed any sort of interest. Hey, yes, I'm interested in learning more. I'm interested in showing up to an event. I did show up to an event. I did go to a lunch. I did go to a dinner. We have to have at minimum 120 of those guys in that C category that allow for us, again, to get to or have a highest likelihood that we're going to reach our new member goal of 15. And then ultimately we have to multiply that number by two, and we have to at minimum have 240 guys in the D category, and the D category is just 240 guys on our names list. So that's just 240 guys we can reach out to. We've gotten those names from different pipelines. In this case, 16 different pipelines would be ideal, right? So that's IFC primary recruitment, that's tabling, that's DMs on Instagram. That's through referral forms, that's alumni and advisors, that's through our scholarship form, that's through whatever the case is, we have to have those 16 pipelines. And so what we need to remember, right, is that when we hear chapters, or maybe you hear this like, hey, we can have a smaller names list and we're going to be okay. Hey, Hayden, Axel, Chase, alumni, advisor, we want to get 15 guys, and right now our names list is only at 75. And we're going to, and if you then follow up with, we're going to be okay, we should be able to find 15 guys, just know that that's not accurate. We need to get that names list up, right? And so we want to get as many names on our names list as possible in order to get as many bids out as possible there, right? I saw him just join. I know we have a couple Kansas guy. I was just on the phone with with one of the Kansas VPs of recruitment. Had a really great conversation earlier this week about their recruitment, and he was telling me, Hayden, we have 400 guys on the names list. We've extended almost 100 bids or somewhere around there. We're going to, right? And our goal is to be anywhere between 20 and 25 before school starts. Awesome, right? I told him, I said, Michael, that is great news in terms of you've gotten that names list up. You've allowed for that to grow. I'm going to encourage you to continue for that to grow. And you've been able to get your bids out because I know your goal of wanting to get 20 to 25 by the end of the month, right? And that's the goal for the chapter. And so there's ways in which you can do it. If you were to say, Hayden, here's where we're at, here's our goal, and we don't have any bids out, or maybe our names list is closer to the 75 to 80 range, I would have some different conversations with him. But that's just a great example of like they got their numbers up, right? They're getting those bids out based off that mutual interest from guys, and they're starting to see some good success with bids coming back, bids being accepted, and now they can focus more of their attention on how do we close those bids rather than how do we just find guys, right? And how do we get that interest there, and allow for that stress to be a little bit less because they've done their work on getting that names list up there.
Can I ask where he met that many people already? Because it's summertime, and they're not in school as well right now, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And we can connect offline, and kind of connect you all if you want to just throw that in the chat there. I know Michael will be happy to connect with you. That is a campus that does heavy summer recruitment, so that's part of it there. But I know Michael in that chapter would be happy to chat with you, specifically about kind of how they've seen that success there. Um, all right, so that's number four. Number five, and this is one I hear pretty constantly over the summer. Communication to P&Ms over summer. It's going to be awkward, so we should wait until the semester starts, right? We don't want to scare them off. We don't want to be too pushy. It's going to be a little bit awkward. What does that look like? This is not the case whatsoever, and it's really more about how do we effectively communicate to P&Ms over the summer, and how do we ensure that it's not as pushy as maybe we think it is, or maybe it's not as pushy, or maybe is not as awkward, or maybe is not as like strong communication that maybe we received as P&Ms, which I think a lot of guys is that's where they're coming from. And so here you'll see really three different or three ways or three things that you need to have when we're thinking about effective communication to P&Ms specifically over the summer. And this is either via text, email, DMs, whatever the case may be. The three areas are it has to be personable, it has to be brief and to the point, it has to include a call to action, right? What we can't do, and then we'll get to the example, is just say, Hey Axel, what's up, dude? I'm Hayden with DU. Are you interested in joining a frat this year? Right? Um, that's coming on a little strong. It's not really being personable in any way. It's not really helping them kind of break the ice in a way that could be helpful and relationship focused. And so instead, and this is a script that I think a lot of the guys, or any guy that I say, hey, if you want this script, let me send it to you. It's hey, insert P&M name. That's the first thing, right? We need to make sure that Axel knows I'm texting him, right? I'm not texting necessarily anyone, or I'm not necessarily fully copy and pasting. I'm putting some work into it, right? I'm introducing myself. I'm saying, hey, I'm a fellow student here at UO in this case. That's where I went. Congrats on committing. So this is an example of maybe I'm DMing somebody from the class of 2030 page. First and foremost, right, I just wanted to reach out to let you know that if you have any questions about being a student, I'd be happy to answer those for you, right? Any question about being a student, student life, you guys can word that in the way that you want. I'm ultimately saying, hey, I understand you're 17, 18 years old. You're about to come to the University of Oregon. Let me be a helpful student there, right? Then I can transition into, hey, I'm also VP of recruitment for Delta Upsilon fraternity. Here's what this is the type of chapter we are, which goes back to that 91% of individuals who would say yes to a chapter who has high moral development, leadership, alumni connections, making a positive impact right? And it's simple as, would that be something you'd be interested in learning more about, right? That gives them the opportunity to say, yes, I'd be interested in learning more about it. Hey, maybe, not quite sure. No, I'm okay for right now, right? But it provides a call to action or a question that they can respond to, while also knowing, hey, if you just need anything in general, I'm here for you. Reach out. I'm a fellow student, right? I want to be supportive in that sense. So it's very relationship focused. Again, it doesn't have to be awkward. If somebody says, hey, yeah, I'd be interested in learning more about it, great. We can now start having those conversations after the fact. If somebody goes, hey, maybe I'll check you guys out when I get there on campus, perfect. I'll put you on my list as somebody to reach back out to as we get closer to the semester. If somebody says, no, I'm good, hey, all good, man. Like, again, if you have any questions, just let me know about student life. Um, hopefully we'll see you around campus when you get there or whatnot, right? And so it's building those relationships in. Again, it's not awkward, it's not forceful, it's not going to make somebody feel weird. I was actually just doing this today on one of our expansions, right? I had some conversations with guys at the end of the spring. And today I just texted all of them, hey man, just checking in. How's your summer going? Just wanted to see if there were any other questions you had, right? So it wasn't weird. And almost every guy that's responded is like, hey, thanks for checking in. Summer's going great. I'm excited for the fall, whatever those things are. And we're able to have a mini conversation, but it essentially lets them know you're still on my mind. We're still thinking about you. We still want to like be committed to building that relationship there. Other additional key points here when we're communicating to P&M, specifically as they're going into kind of their first semester in college, we have to be consistent with it, right? We don't necessarily want to send a message on June 1st and then never talk to them again. And the next message is on August 15th, specifically if that individual is responding, right? We also want to be consistent in our follow-up. Hey, we're having a barbecue at the house, during move-in weekend. Hey, we got some guys who are actually going to help with move-in. Let us know what your dorm is. We'd be happy to stop by and help you out, meet you a little bit, right? Maybe say hi to the parents, whatever the case is. Always know when the next touch point will be and who's in charge of that touch point, right? So if I'm texting or messaging with Axel, and I know Chase is going to be in town for whatever reason, or maybe Chase is an orientation leader, I may tell Axel, hey, Axel, I actually have a chapter brother of mine, Chase. He's an orientation leader. I'm going to have Chase reach out to you, and maybe you two can connect when you get to orientation in a couple weeks, right? So again, it's making those connection pieces. When we're getting closer to the events or things that you guys are doing, share as much information as possible, right? Hey, we're having a barbecue at the house on August 17th. I know move-in's that day. If you're free, we'd love to have you stop by, right? We're gonna be having some cornhole. We got some, burgers and hot dogs going on. We're gonna have some college football playing, whatever the case is. Those type of things, right? So you want to share that information rather than just being like, "Hey, man, we're just gonna hang out. We're gonna have a barbecue. Hopefully, we'll see you there." Right? It's not giving them much to work with. Goes into the next point. Don't just say, let me know or hope to see you there. Ask if a P&M is interested or planning on attending. Or again, like the previous message, are they interested in learning more? Right? So always let there be an opportunity for there to be some back and forth and some conversation. And then the last two, like encourage P&Ms to bring friends or others they might know. Again, it helps break the ice a little bit, saying, hey, if there's guys that you want to bring your, roommate, bring your guys on your dorm floor, whatever the case is, and then use your recruitment committee to help you in this, right? So part of it is like you don't want to be bogged down, so kind of delegate that work there, which I know there's some good examples out there of groups that I work with that do this really well. So again, my biggest piece here is don't think that just because it's summer, don't think because it's July, don't think because you're going to scare off a potential new member. Don't let that prevent you from doing some of that outreach to start following guys, to start DMing them, to start sending those text messages, to start sending those emails. Because back to Amplify session number 2 a couple weeks ago, recruitment's 365. And so we need to start building those relationships now and allowing for those to develop. And if you utilize this in a more relational way, right? And less of just like, hey, dude, are you interested in joining a frat? It's not going to be as awkward. And those guys are looking for connection pieces and belonging pieces. And we have to be the ones to do that outreach there. And we can't always sit back and think that they're, again, going to come to us, which goes back to what we talked about a little bit earlier. So myth number 6, and again, we hear this, the recruitment team are the only members who should be focused on recruitment. That's completely wrong and completely false. In fact, more member involvement equals a higher likelihood of recruitment success. Now, the other ways that a lot of guys hear this or phrase it is like recruitment is a team effort or it's a chapter-wide effort. Yes. And we also have to understand that not everyone is going to be as involved as maybe the recruitment chairs, the recruitment committee, the vice president of recruitment, the executive board. And I think that's where a lot of guys get lost, right? Is hey, you guys, that's a priority for you. I'm just a general member. You guys are the ones who are in charge of finding the 20 new members, and I'm just gonna kind of sit back and hope that that happens, right? That's not necessarily the case. Me as a general member, I have the responsibility to have some sort of involvement as a member, and that what that involvement looks like is it's going to look different than what somebody on the recruitment committee is asked to do, but it's not necessarily going to be that I'm uninvolved, right? So the way that I express this is, and I coach high school basketball, like my guys who are tasked with scoring 15, 20 points a night, having six, seven, eight assists, their involvement within the game and within that competition that night is going to look different than my role player coming off the bench that I'm asking to get, 3 or 4 good minutes during the game, maybe a couple steals, maybe a couple rebounds and like that involvement. Now, together, those guys are going to give us the highest likelihood of success. If my role player who's sitting at the bench goes in and doesn't get involved the way he should, we're going to have a harder time being successful in that. And so I think that's really important to think about, especially VPs of recruitment. And we'll talk a little bit more about like planning recruitment and how we execute it and talk about it with members. But just understand if you're hearing your recruitment team, your exec board, your chapter members saying, hey, you guys are in charge of recruitment, go at it. We're excited for what you guys are going to produce. Start having those conversations to say, nope, we need member involvement across the board. That's going to look different depending on the member. But in order for us to have the highest likelihood of success for recruitment this upcoming year, we need as many members, ideally every member, involved at some level, not just the recruitment team. Myth number 7. This is one of my favorite conversations to have with undergraduate chapters. It's this idea that we can only extend bids on bid day and or talk about bids during primary IFC recruitment. Now, I understand there's a lot of caveats to this for certain chapters because there are IFC rules and policies and regulations. So we'll talk a little bit about this and also with certain chapters I've spoken to about kind of what does that actually look like. Sometimes where this myth comes from is they miss that you chapters don't understand really what the IFC policy is, or they heard something from a different VP of recruitment, or they heard something from a different member of a different chapter, and they're not really asking the questions, and so they just kind of say, "Hey, we really can't do this until bid day." Great example of this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about kind of what we can actually do is I was working with the chapter a handful of years ago. I said, great, like it sounds like you have, 6 or 7 guys that you're ready to bid. When can you start extending bids? Do you have to wait until bid day per IFC policy or not? And the undergrad or the vice president of recruitment of that chapter said, I'm not sure. Let me ask. He confirmed with his fraternity and sorority life office in the IFC, like, no, you can give bids at any point. Bid day is just the day that we have for every chapter to kind of make it a little bit more official. So this goes in the realm of like IFC bid day doesn't always mean only chapters can extend bids, only day that chapters can extend bids. This vice president of recruitment said, okay, Hayden, like, here's what I heard. What do we do? I said, man, start extending bids now. And within 48 hours, they had 7 guys accept bids. They had 7 bids extended. And they didn't wait the extra week to try to get those bids or wait until quote unquote bid day. Right. And so what was huge on that is they probably would have maybe had 4 or 5 guys accept bids. They probably would have missed out on 2 or 3 guys if they would have waited because other chapters were probably extending them bids. And so if we don't have to wait until the IFC formal bid day to extend bids, let's not wait. There are chapters on this call right now that have extended bids depending on their campus. Yes, there's an IFC bid day in the fall, but we don't necessarily need to wait for that. And we always have to have the mindset of, hey, let me just confirm with IFC, let me confirm with the fraternity and sorority life office that that is the case, and get some clarity on that to make sure that that doesn't necessarily mean we can only do it on that day. Now, I do know there's chapters on this call that they do have to wait until IFC bid day to do that. And so what does that mean? It means it's okay to talk about bids through the recruitment process. We want to understand where guys' interest level lies in terms of if we were to extend bids to somebody, right? A lot of people get scared of this because they don't want to quote unquote bid promise. They don't want to lead anyone on, which I totally understand and validate, but there is a good way of going about this, which is going to allow for you to understand if I were to extend bids, where does this individual lie? And how do I get a good gauge and a good interest that we can do throughout the recruitment process, even if we have to wait until bid day or a certain day within the semester to do this, right? Or for some of you deferred campus vice presidents of recruitment, hey, we can talk about this with freshmen throughout the fall in preparation for the spring, instead of just waiting until the spring to talk about bids to have this conversation. And the best way to do this, and individuals again who have been on a coaching call with me or have had conversations understand I'm a huge advocate of bid scaling. So what you would do is if you have any interest in an individual and you know that there is mutual interest, always ask a potential new member, Axel, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, Hayden, thanks for talking to me about DU, but never talk to me about DU again. 10 being, if you received a bid right now, you would say yes. How likely would you be to accept a bid to DU right now? It's a great way to understand where members' interest is at. It's a great way to talk about bids with a potential new member prior to actual bid day or prior to even you fully extending a bid. It doesn't bid promise, but it allows for you to gauge the most accurate way, or it allows for you to gauge their interest in the most accurate way, right? I talk to a lot of chapters who say, Hayden, we have a lot of high interest guys, right? Well, how do we know that they're high interest? Well, this allows for us to more or less confirm where their interest level lies. Because what it does is if Axel came back to me and said, Hayden, I'm at a 7, I'm at an 8, my follow-up question would be like, awesome, man. I'm super glad that you have high interest. We have really high interest in you too. What's preventing you from being at an 8, being at a 9, being at that 10? And now Axel can talk about his concerns. He can talk about his barriers. He can talk about those things that are going to be important for us to address prior to him potentially getting that bid or prior to him making that full decision, right? And so I do know there's some guys on this call that have been doing this a lot within the past few months, and it sounds like it's been going really well. We also have it where you do this and a guy who you thought had higher interest, right, might say, and you were going to give a bid to, might say, hey man, I'm more at like a 3 or a 4. Great, let's have that conversation, and that's going to change things a little bit. This also goes into this goes into myth number 9, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But please, 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 as much as you can, when you're talking to a P&M, when you know there's a mutual interest, use this question to gauge where somebody is at. And you can use this question in the middle of IFC primary recruitment. You can use this question today with P&Ms that you're talking to. And you, again, don't have to wait until bid day to ask this question or extend bids depending on your campus. And if you're not quite sure, please reach out to myself, Axel, or Chase, and we can help you kind of work through what that policy is, how we can talk about bids, what does the conversations look like. But just know that doesn't mean just because you have an IFC primary bid day doesn't mean that we can't extend bids prior to that, or it doesn't mean that we can't have conversations about bids prior to that. Myth number 8, sometimes we hear this like P&Ms can't help with recruitment, or I guess there's a myth that like P&Ms, uh, some chapters go, I don't know how P&Ms can help with recruitment, right? That's again false. I think there's 3 big ways that I want you all to really think about and really kind of dive into when you think about recruitment, especially going into the fall. First one is like they can bring their friends, they can bring their roommates to the events, getting them connected with the recruitment team. Always ask, hey, do you have any friends or guys in your dorm or within your friend group that might be interested, right? Or who I can reach out to invite them to an event, invite them to something, grab dinner with them, grab lunch with them. Hey, if you have a roommate, I'd love to grab lunch with both of you guys this week. Whatever the case may be, that's super important. We do this on expansion all the time. With one of our upcoming expansions, we were able to do that every single guy I say is like, hey, if you have any friends, let me know, have them reach out. And literally yesterday, I had a guy reach out who said, hey, my buddy told me about DU's return to campus. I wanted to see if we could set up a meeting, right? And I don't know if that fully would have happened if I didn't encourage the other guy I was talking to and the other PNM, hey, if you know anyone, make sure that they reach out or feel free to pass their information along. So that PNM was able to help us with recruitment because he was able to get one of his buddies who he talked to about it to reach out and us have a conversation tomorrow. Other pieces is they're going to talk about DU, especially if a PNM has a high interest in joining or has already accepted a bid. They can help you lock in other guys, right? They can talk about, hey, why did I join? Join my pledge class. This is going to be a super fun experience. I remember during my recruitment, I'm a founding father, but I got my bid. I knew another guy who got a bid. Little did I know, the staff member who was doing the expansion was talking to that guy who was like, hey, I need your help kind of finalizing the deal with Hayden. I was thinking about my bid. Brandon was his name, was hanging out on a Saturday with some mutual friends. He sends me a picture and he goes, hey, man, I accepted my bid. You definitely should accept yours. We should do this together. And that sold it for me. I was like, cool. I know somebody else. I like him. I feel like we're going to be buddies. And he's one of my best friends. And that was almost 15 years ago. So super, super important for us to really think about how we're utilizing potential new members. I use the analogy, I was just using this with Vice President of Recruitment earlier this week. I was talking about if you've seen the 30 for 30 documentary about the Fab Five, Juwan Howard talks about how he probably did more recruiting for the other four than the actual coaching staff. And that's so true, right? Like that's who those guys were playing with. That's who Juwan Howard wanted to play with. That's who he wanted to have that experience with. And so a potential new member who has the high interest in joining or has accepted a bid or who has said, yes, I will accept a bid on bid day, if you've had that conversation, they are going to help you recruit other potential new members. You just have to help them understand what that looks like. And then again, to that last point, helping with recruitment of other PNMs. So it all goes hand in hand. But it's big, big thing that you all have to think about. How do I get other guys who are recruiting to help me and not think that they're just kind of this one-off and then collectively they'll all of a sudden be this new member pledge class. Like it can work, but you're going to see it work a lot better when you allow for those other PNMs to help each other out and help you out with recruitment as well. Number nine, if a PNM doesn't express concerns/barriers to joining, then they don't have any, right? You hear this a lot from undergraduates. They go, hey, this guy had a lot of high interest. He didn't express any concerns to me. He didn't express any barriers. And then Hayden, he didn't join. And I don't know why he didn't join. Well, that's probably because we didn't do a good job trying to figure out and addressing those concerns, right? Because more than likely, every PNM and every individual that you are going to extend a bid to has some sort of concern, whether it's a large concern, right, or whether it's a small one, right? And some of them are going to express it, and some of them are not. And so it's our job as vice presidents of recruitment, as growth team members on the expansion side of things, as even advisors and alumni, to ensure PNM's concerns and/or barriers for potentially joining are addressed. And so the scaling question is really helpful because a lot of times that's where guys are going to be the most honest. They're going to say, well, what's preventing me from being at a higher number is finances, is time management. I just haven't met enough of the guys. And if we're not necessarily getting much out of the scaling question, it's also our job to say, okay, cool. Has somebody talked to you about finances? Do you have any questions about it? Has somebody talked to you about the live-in requirement if we have a chapter house? Cool. Any questions on it? Are there any barriers or kind of, folks in your life, whether it be family, friends, whatever the case may be, who might have a little hesitation there, right? And I've seen some chapters be able to address some of those hesitations where an alumni or an advisor is able to call a parent and that parent is able to talk to the alumni and advisor and that barrier, that concern, which is preventing the individual from saying yes fully is mitigated or addressed because we were able to talk with them, figure it out, address it, and now that PNM is saying yes, right? And so that's a really big thing where I think a lot of chapters just think, hey, the PNM didn't say anything, the PNM didn't tell me that. He should be good to go. He has no issues, but ultimately, at the end of the day, he might have some concerns or some barriers. And so again, it's our job to make sure that we're addressing those and we're being really smart in what that looks like. And then the last myth, and I don't know if this is necessarily a myth, but this is just something that I obviously want to make sure everyone understands. I think it's a myth if chapters are doing all the things that they are hearing about and implementing and the strategies and the best practices, that recruitment is this linear process, that we're just going to never have ups and downs or bad days or roadblocks or barriers ourselves or whatever the case may be. What we think and hope recruitment looks like is we start at one point and it just continues to get better day in and day out, right? We continue to get more guys to say yes. We continue to get more interest. We continue to build our names list. We continue to get excitement, momentum, all of these pieces. What it actually looks like is ups and downs. There's going to be really good weeks and really good days. There's going to be not so good days, right? And there's going to be some days where you get rejected 10 different times from 10 different people. And there's going to be the potential new members that you're like, dude, this guy I want really bad, right? And he's going to, for some reason, say no, right? But ultimately, we have to understand that, like, that's part of the process. And ultimately, recruitment requires you, as the vice president of recruitment, as the recruitment committee members, as a general member, to be consistent, to be resilient, and to be flexible. We have to be consistent in what we do, right? We have to stack days. We have to get 1% better every single day with recruitment. We have to spend minimum 20 to 30 minutes every day with recruitment, whether that's outreach or doing something else. We have to be resilient when we hit those roadblocks, when we hit the walls, when we get to that day where you're like, man, I don't want to text 50 more guys. We have to be resilient to push through that. Hey, I just got, 5 different rejections, 4 from guys we thought were really going to accept bids. Great. We have to be resilient through that. And then we have to be flexible, right? We have to know that certain things just are going to go a little bit different, or what we thought our recruitment plan was going to look like starting in the fall needs to change a little bit, right? It's those halftime adjustments that we have to make. That's what recruitment requires of you. For example, when I was vice president of recruitment, I said I wanted to have a recruitment event every single day for 2 weeks because we were new to campus and that's how we were going to get individuals to join. My recruitment team came to me after day 3 and they said, Hayden, the chapter's starting to get burned out. Can we change some things up, get rid of some events? Maybe on Fridays we can do a little bit more lunches and dinners with our high priority PNMs. And we were able to be flexible and change some things. And we were able to recruit 20 guys in that fall. We also were consistent, right? And resilient. I was texting 125, 150 guys a day. My recruitment chairs were texting 50, 75 guys a day. We were getting a lot of no's, a lot of rejection, but we worked through it. We were consistent in it. And again, we were flexible and allowed for ourselves to get those 20 guys in that fall and feel really good and build that momentum. There were plenty of times that we could have just said, you know what, we're not going to do this. We don't want to do this. And our recruitment would have suffered because of it. So that's really a big piece to this is like, that's what recruitment requires of us. And while some days it's really tough, there's going to be days where it's really exciting, and we're able to build that momentum and build that really good foundation. So with that being said, want to turn it over, want to see what questions you all have. If there's any in the chat, I see some things coming in the chat. Axel or Chase, let me know if there's anything in there. But feel free to throw a question in the chat. Feel free to come off mute, whatever you guys need. All right. So hearing none, not a huge issue. Obviously, always feel free to reach out to me via email, via text message, give me a call. I know there's a good portion of you guys on this call that have already set up recruitment coaching calls with a member of our growth team, so we'll continue to do that. Really appreciate, again, everyone's attendance and participation tonight. Next Amplify DU session will be next Wednesday. And then looking forward, we're 2 weeks out from LI. So for those who are going to be at LI, really excited to see you there. We've got full Friday worth of recruitment symposium and planning. We're bringing in some really high level alumni experts on recruitment and Mark Gierke and Jacob Ellis. We've got a recruitment panel on Saturday morning that's going to include our vice president of recruitment at Purdue, Marco. So being able to share just a lot of great knowledge, being able to connect on recruitment. So really excited for LI if you're going to be there, excited to meet you in person. And once again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a text. Again, this will be recorded. So if you want the recording of the link, you can either go on later this week to find that online, or feel free to shoot me an email and I can shoot that over once we have it. So other than that, hopefully you all have a great rest of your night, and we will see you next week for session 3.